If you're worried about AI getting in the way of you actually teaching, or just people cheating completely in your classes, or, taking away the creativism in writing or anything else that your industry or whatever you're doing is, make whatever you're doing harder. I know that sounds absurd at first, but think about that for a moment. Every time a new technology has arrived on the scene, we had to raise the bar. And I talk about this in almost every video I make, where whatever you're doing, if you get a tool or something that makes it easier to do what you're doing, where you can do the same quality but at a higher output, or do the same output at a higher quality, then you need to raise the bar. Any technologies based around that concept have absolutely raised the bar, or at least required us to raise the bar, right? To lift beyond what we were capable of so that we could reach for higher goals because we're saving time somewhere else. Now, that's what we need to do in education. Education needs to evolve. If you're teaching courses, if you are in a college, if you are sitting there and you're worried about AI making your class too easy, well, then your class is too easy. That's the simple problem. The problem is not AI. The problem is not that students are cheating. That has been in existence and is going to stay a thing for quite a while. The problem is that your classes now need to be more creative, more challenging. The weight is going to be on the professors, the educators. And I don't mean just college. That's the aspect, the niche, the direction and perception that I'm speaking from, because that's where I spend a lot of my life. However, if you are in any form of education and teaching, or any industry where AI is taking things over, you shouldn't be worried or upset or fearful or angry at it. You should be angry that your industry hasn't raised the bar yet. That's what's already happening in the coding industry. That's what's happening in a lot of the freelance writing industries, the professional industries, is people are accepting that AI exists, and now it's becoming a requirement. If you aren't using it, you're just not doing enough. That's simply as it is. This happened in academia multiple times over. Let's fall back to the calculator, right? Most people were not using a calculator. When the calculator was added, most people were probably upset about it. I mean, think about it. Myself and people older than me, many of you were told you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket when you grow up. Well, that didn't age too well. In fact, I used the calculator and a lot more advanced technologies in my pocket on an everyday basis. It doesn't devalue math. It just simply makes it so we don't have to spend time doing the standard equations on a piece of paper or doing everything else, so we can spend our time doing something else. Now, for some people, that meant not working as hard in math. And to others, that will look like they're being lazier, when in actuality, well, it's either A, not what they wanted to do, or B, the person not spending as much time on that specific math problem may be doing much grander ones. And that's exactly what happened. A lot of the amazing things we do today would not be possible without the calculator. Simply as put, we generated far more value with that tool than was diminished with it. The internet did this as well, right? Classes, courses, people all over were super upset if you were using Google for paper. I'm sure you could find countless quotes online about people arguing about the use of the internet in the classroom. I'm sure you can find many that argue about the calculator in the classroom. And you can certainly find plenty about AI in the classroom. The difference is, with time, everything becomes fundamental that we use every day. And regardless of whether or not you believe it should or shouldn't be, you need to look less at the tool and more at how you can make that tool make your classroom, your education, your course, whatever you're doing better. To dive even further into this, look at how we do papers now. Google used to be an add-on, this digital thing that was argued about. The idea of using the internet to find sources and citations, again, the same thing. What happened was not a removal or a discarding of the internet, but rather a greater application of it, and thusly a raising of the bar. If you don't use the internet on your papers, it is almost impossible to go through college. There is a very, very low chance. It is still possible, but it would be extremely challenging with the course load, what is expected of you, and the timelines to get all the citations, the sources, the research, the writing, the work done to be able to turn in an assignment, right? before Google, it was expected it would take you some time to find sources. It was expected that you would have to go through the library, find your book, read through it, which you still can do to this day to supplement your work. It's not like it just got rid of, right? I love going into the library to find books, but I also love being able to hop on JSTOR or Sage Journals, look for an academic article and find some things. The difference is we figured out a way to make it more streamlined, to adapt it to the classroom, but more importantly, we made the classes harder. You're expected to be able to use the internet, not just use it to get an article, but to get the right articles, to use it well, to be able to go and not just Google a random article and find something on Wikipedia, but be able to go through, find sources, explore databases, whether it's JSTOR, Sage, any of these other journal access points, Google Scholar, right? You're taught and experienced it as a baseline. No matter what your degree is, it doesn't matter where you're getting it from. You are taught how to use the internet in a proper way to complete your degree. All of that addition as well created something easier, right? In that transitionary period where people were, have a Google in the classroom, not have it. The people who were using it were exponentially faster and better in what their writing was. They were creating articles in half the time. They were able to get books for little to no price, little to no effort, but still be able to get amazing quality. And now they were able to make them faster. So what ended up happening is, well, instead of punishing them, you were just expected to be able to do that. You're expected to be able to pump out a paper very quickly now. You're expected to be able to type, to use the internet to do all of these things in a much faster way. And not only that, the knowledge within them is expected to be higher. 50 years ago, what you would be doing as a high school senior is pretty much elementary school now, right? What is expected of a high schooler, what is expected of a freshman in college is far more challenging to a whole other level, especially across the board, than if you were to go back 30 or 40 years. Even 100 years ago, many people were still illiterate, right? The baseline has slowly risen as technology and access to that technology has risen. AI is the next thing to bump that baseline up. If every student is using AI and you're expecting them to, if every professor, if every professional career is using some sort of large language model or machine learning or something along these lines, it's not just going to stay status quo and the baseline's there and then we all reach the baseline and we're all just sitting there lazy. No, we're going to create something beyond that. That's how humans work. And the first step of that is education. How do we educate people how to step beyond that baseline? Well, you have to grade them on it or push them on it or teach them on it. And how do you do that? By raising the bar to actually do it. Your college classes that are 400 levels, that are senior levels, the papers you're expecting, the quality you're expecting from seniors is now going to kind of drop down to your sophomores and freshmen. I remember I was speaking with a lead educator at one of the colleges that I work with, and she was very outside the realm of AI. She hasn't learned much on it. Very brilliant. This is not to say that she's out of touch or behind or anything like that. This is not, but rather this is a point that she didn't have as much education in it, right? Which is fine. She's been in the industry. She has a lot of work and a lot of things that she's working on. And to her credit, she reached out to learn from me about it. She wasn't just a lead faculty member. She also was teaching classes. And one of her classes is on syntax and grammar. And she was so worried about, well, do we not teach grammar classes anymore? And I was explaining to her, it's not that grammar is pushed to the side. It's that the base level you should be expecting as a collegiate professor has now increased. I asked her what her highest level class was, and she explained to me that it was a nuanced class on the structure of grammar. She was a linguist, so she looks at the way this intricate tapestry of words molds together. She's essentially the scientist of writers, right? A very amazing outlook. And I tried to show her now that science is even more important because you need to understand how AI is doing that. What is the difference between an AI written article or an article that hasn't gone through a long process of input from someone individual compared to one that is very tonal, is very specific, right? You need to be able to look at the very differences of grammar. Now it's not just the basic grammar, right? It's not just a grammar 101 class. Your grammar 101 class should be, okay, here's a perfect grammar paper because I used my AI to fix all the basic grammar issues. How do I mold the nuances? Where's the creative writing? And this is for every form of writing now. I reassured her that now her 400 level class, it should be a freshman class. You should be expected to learn that high level nuance. And she lit up. She got so happy because she realized in that moment, and I also realized that this was an opportunity to now teach what we are really excited about. We're taking what the experts are learning and bringing it down so that now the next experts, who we see as the top of the top, who is the limit, who is the experts, are now being dropped down because of AI and other technologies, because most people can now do what a lot of them can do. This is not to say that a layman or an everyday person is the equivalent of someone who has a PhD. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying people who are pursuing academics at the undergraduate level, who are truly interested, who truly have passion, they can still put in the same amount of effort and time and reach to the levels that we considered experts at this time or a decade ago, right? What a standard undergraduate student can do with artificial intelligence tools properly when taught how to use them, just like how we're taught how to use Google, just how we're taught how to use the calculator properly. It allows them to reach that level and then thusly be graded at that level. Our academics is being pushed up by AI, not made easier. And again, you always hear me harp about this in a lot of the videos, but that's a concept we need to understand. It's a perspective I always come from, which is education, but it's also applied to business. To use an example, coding. You take one line of Python code, it's actually doing hundreds and hundreds of lines of other lower level languages code, right? It's built off this pyramid of previously made innovations and languages, right? Before, you had to know all of this machine language and the next level and that to be able to just do a couple lines of code. But because of what came before, because of the technologies of putting together, someone who hasn't spent as much time in that is able to do everything that was considered expert as a novice, right? As a basic Python programmer, you are controlling thousands of lines of machine code, you're controlling transistors. To make this even simpler, simply by using your mouse or tapping on a screen, you are interfacing with hundreds and hundreds of lines of code and transistors and stuff. That would have been impossible for most people to do 100 years ago, barely even 20 years ago. But now we're all doing it because it's easy. And now not only is it easy, it's expected. The same thing is happening with coding. The next language up are these machine learning models. Now the best coders aren't someone who can just code in Python. It's someone who's able to use English to tell these programs, these large language models, these machine learnings, from a coding perspective, to do coding for it, and then obviously edit and redo things. The next layer or language is this machine learning language, right? And so imagine you have this pyramid, and it's the machine learning language, and then you have your standard, Python and C#. Well, C can technically be an intermediary as well, but I digress. Then you have your other intermediary languages, then you have your machine languages, and technically there's even breakdowns in those that are more complicated. But again, you have this pyramid, but originally, when you started out with that first technology, that machine language was the top of the pyramid. And now it's the base of the pyramid. It's the base of our foundation, of our house of knowledge. Same thing in education. What used to be the peak of education, us learning about, various things, being able to write articles, right? Being able to write on a piece of paper was a big deal. Being able to use and grind down some ink and use a pen, you had to do all these other things. But the advent of new technologies, new innovations, new knowledge allowed it so almost everyone could write, which then led to almost everyone being able to read with the printing press, right? Now everyone could have a book. Now many more people could print books faster, quicker, get access to them, which meant more people had access, so we needed to up the bar. Now everyone's expected to be able to read. It wasn't expected that you could read. Now it is. It wasn't expected that you could do math, but after the calculator, a 6-year-old better be able to do 2,287 multiplied by 21 because they can put it in there. Yes, they're not physically doing the math out, but they are getting the answer so that they can now spend the time to do whatever that is that answer was required for. I don't have to code my processor to be able to write in a Word document. Someone has already given me the technology to do that, so now I can spend my time writing or doing whatever it is creative that I am good at instead of having to rely on all these other things and being an expert in 20 other things, which means I'm now expected to do that. That's what we need to shift. Again, this is another mindset shift. I'm always bringing up mindset shifts and paradigm shifts in these videos, but it's super important. Using these tools is almost completely on how you're looking at them. And that's just tools in general, not just AI. The shifting how you look at things, how you use things, will allow you to make things and do things far better. And one of the best mindset shifts we can have right now is merely the fact that we need to make school harder. We need to raise the bar. And I don't mean harder as in like, oh, give them more work, all this stuff. I mean critically thought, the level of knowledge, what you're talking about. To give an example, if you are worried that your students are going to be using AI on your recent English exam prompt, well, then make it more challenging. Make it use AI in there. Or even better, reverse it. My mother, she's a teacher in her classroom. Often she'll sit there and she'll tell them to take the prompt and make 3 essays out of it and just have it output. And then the grade, the exam, is to find what could be better in the essays, to rewrite them, to compare them, to see what those prompts did, why it did the prompts those ways. You're learning the high-level structure, the nuances that an editor would usually do, because now you're able to create and have the base. Now, there might be a disconnect there. You're like, well, they still need to know how to write. They need to do the process of writing. Yes and no. They do need to change the paper, do the writing themselves, see what good writing is, but that's what you're showing them. That's what you're teaching them. You're explaining that good writing, but they know. Most people do know what sounds good, what does sound right, especially if they're going to college from it. We're not expecting them to, because that used to be challenging. It used to be challenging to have a whole document that you could read and edit that's your own personal writing or close to it. But now I can go and have a quick 2-3 pages exactly about the prompt with my own citations. But now you have the opportunity to look at good writing, or at least decent writing, and make it better. You already are seeing it. It's already all around, right? You are expected to be able to find those sources faster, or you're expected to have a whole paper faster. So now you're expected to have that knowledge faster, sooner. And it's true. I know a lot of people who have become much better writers, and I'll link some studies below that show this isn't just my opinion and observations. This is something that's been peer-reviewed and academic. The more people have been using AI, specifically students, to help with their writing and have been using it in this expansive way where they're trying to do more with it rather than just copy and paste, are becoming much better writers when they don't use AI. And I've noted that personally, right? You can read the articles, you can take that, but me personally, I like to look at the whole aspect of what's actually happening for me. Ever since I started using various large language models to help write very large things for me, and my process of writing and reading and editing and changing allowed me to find a better individual tone. It allowed me to see where I sound generic because I'm seeing generic writing over and over, and then I start to dislike it, and then I start to see the connections. It's gotten to the point now where I don't really need to use an AI detector to tell that someone has used AI, and many professors are starting to notice this too. A generic writer is what most writing is in the world now. Generic academic articles, generic thing. They have a standard flow, set style. The best papers are the ones that go beyond that dive into the passions, the creative, the understanding. That's what really molds and brings out. And if you're constantly editing to do that, then you're learning the most important part about writing, which is the individual tone, the nuances of it. If you're able to get there faster, if you're able to write a whole generic paper that's around your concept, imagine what you can do now. Now you can either A, write a lot more papers or expect more of those papers. Like now the baseline is you better have perfect grammar, you better have perfect spelling. spelling? Why aren't you using AI and Grammarly and all these things? In that aspect, if you're expecting your students to all be using AI, then you should expect them to all have perfect grammar. So maybe you take more points off for it, or, argue more for it, so on and so forth. Now you're grading for what makes the paper more individual. Now you're grading for looking at or trying to create, again, to not look at the grading aspect if you're not a teacher watching this, but now you're looking at, how do I make this paper sound like me? How do I bring out the nuances of it? How do I explain it better? And how do I use more language or more efficient language than even what the AI did or what I would have done in the past? It's expanding the bar, raising it up to a whole other level. These tools, these technologies made it easier, and it made it so more people could do what the experts used to only be able to do. But that doesn't mean we're hitting a ceiling and then everyone's just going to be diminished. No, it means that now the experts need to be better and will be better and already are striving for that, because that's how it works. That means we're raising the whole bar. If freshmen and undergraduates, the bar is raised, then that means the bar is going to be raised again for graduate programs and even for PhD theses, which means the papers we're going to see the experts doing by using a base level of what AI is doing now are going to be out of this world. I can't even imagine some of them. Like I said, the one video I made about my paper that was accepted for publishing that I used AI in is a perfect example. I was an undergraduate when I wrote this. And yes, I'm tooting my own horn here, but I read that paper and I'm like, this is pretty much graduate work. And I'm working towards graduate work now, so I kind of can compare it. But now this makes the question, okay, well, if that's what an undergraduate can do with graduate work, then why aren't we expecting and pushing that bar for graduate work, right? What is now the bar for that? And that's the beautiful part, is you shouldn't be worried about it taking away or this tool ruining school. You should be figuring out how you can expand on it. How can you bring the expert level down to those students? How can you make it harder or more creative, more individual for those students? Now, before I go on another tangent about that, I think it's important to note that there's a lot of ways that you already can do this. There's a lot of resources and tools out there and concepts that teachers are doing. Again, my entire community, the Quantum Quill, is based around figuring this out. What can we do? What are the problems with it? How do we solve those problems? I am trying to get professors from around the country to essentially be a part of this and test it and dive into it, which again, if you are interested, please go click on the link down below and go in for an application. This is the whole idea, is we have to work together now. We have to focus on the students. We have to do the important part of school more now. Instead of checking the boxes and making sure that just these very generic things that most people can do. The reason kids are bored by these things, the reason we are bored by these things, is because it's become easy. It's because it's become so expected. And if it becomes easy and expected, we shouldn't blame the use of the new tools that makes it even easier. We should blame ourselves for not pushing the bar, raising the ceiling. At the end of the day, if we can raise our own abilities to a level beyond what we could do a decade ago, we're making good progress. And that's what we need to do now. Within education, if you're not looking at ways in which to create the fundamental of AI, looking at it from the perspective that everyone's pretty much going to be using it, and how you can make it better, how you can raise up that bar and bring the expert concepts down, you're not really doing the best of job as a teacher, as a professor, as an educator, as a person in your business. And that's what I'm really trying to show you here. And in showing that, I realize I'm going to need to make 1,000 more videos to explain the nuances and the complex myself. I can't sit here and spout, be better, make it harder, do more, if I'm not also doing the same and offering a helping hand. Like the example I gave of my mother in her classroom, I have a lot more, and I've been learning more from a lot of professors on how they're using it in the classroom. I really do see the value in shifting mindsets and diving into this. I see a huge problem in the educational community that's not just about AI, but about the education as a whole. I would love to see it evolve. So with that, I'd like to ask if you could subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. I just want to get this out to other teachers, other educators, other people, other students, to see if we can raise the bar on our own, because it really is going to come down to us. So as always, everyone, have a nice day.